Alrighty. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at systems of equations, how to solve systems of equations by using substitution. I have 3 examples that we're going to do together, and then you'll get a chance to try some others on your own. Let's get to it. So, to solve a system of equations, first of all, just to make sure we're all on the same page, this over here for question number 1 is a system of equations. A system of equations is going to have 2 different equations in it. That's what makes it a system of equations. And the issue with solving it, just trying to solve this one or just that one, is that these equations, they have both an x and a y. They have 2 variables, and we don't know how to solve an equation with 2 different variables. So what we're going to have to do is use this system, use the 2 parts together to figure out the full solution. Now, we're using substitution today. And this first question over here is really nicely set up to be able to do substitution. If you have a system like this, substitution might be the right idea because you already have one of your variables alone. In my first equation up here, y is already by itself, so we're set up to substitute. Now, the way you do it is just you get the variable alone in one of them. Here, the y is already alone. You could get the x alone if you wanted instead, but y is alone here to start, so let's use that. In your next equation, you're going to take whatever y is and substitute it in over there. So I'm going to rewrite the second equation, negative 2x minus 3, but instead of y, I'm going to substitute in what y actually is. Y is 6x minus 11, so instead of y, I'm going to substitute all that in there. So the way I'm going to write it here is just by saying negative 3 parentheses, and in place of y, I put what I'm substituting in, 6x minus 11, and then just finish writing the rest of this, right? Equals negative 7. From here, now look at this. We've got an equation with only one type of variable. Only x's are here. So now I actually know how to go about solving that. And, let's get to it. Let's do it. So here, I see a negative 3 out front of some parentheses. So I'll start by distributing the negative 3 there and there. Bring down this negative 2x, negative 2x. Negative 3 times positive 6x is going to get me a negative 18x. Negative 3 times negative 11 will give me a positive 33. And then I can just bring down the equal sign, negative 7. Let's keep this little line here. Make sure that I'm not combining like terms on opposite sides, right? On the left side, I can combine some like terms. The negative 2x is like terms with the negative 18x. Negative 2, take away 18, is now going to be negative 20x plus 33 equals negative 7. And now, look at this. We're 2 steps away, right? Subtract 33 from both sides. That goes away there. I'm left with negative 20x equals negative 7, take away 33. Maybe you want to use a calculator for that, but that's going to end up being negative 40. And finally, divide both of these sides by the negative 20. And we end up with x is equal to negative 40 divided by negative 20. That's going to be a positive 2. Now, the thing about systems of equations is a lot of students think they're done here. And you've done a good job if you've gotten here, but you're not all the way done. This x equals negative 2 only gave you the answer for one of your variables. Now we got to go back to one of our 2 originals, plug this back in to figure out what y is. Now, you could plug this x into either equation. It does not matter, but I'm going to go ahead and plug it into this first one. So I'm going to put a line here. I'm already taking up real estate from the next question that we're going to be looking at, but I'm going to take this, rewrite it over here, put a little dotted line here. I can fit this. Y is equal to 6. And instead of x, right, it's 6x, but we know that x is really 2. So I'm going to plug that 2 in. 6 times 2 minus 11. So we know that y is really equal to 6 times 2 makes 12 minus 11. And that means that y is going to be 1. Now here, we've got a value for my x, we've got a value for the y. Now we have our full and final solution here. The final answer is, well, all right, don't forget, it goes x and y for your coordinates. So this is going to be 2 first, 1 next. This is my final answer here. Yeah. If you would like, you can go back and plug the x in as 2, 1 in for the y, into either or both of these equations to check to make sure that these are right. I'll leave that for you as an exercise if you want to do it, but let's just focus on making sure that we're getting some more practice on this. I don't want the video to be too long. Moving on to number 2. It's very similar. I already have a y by itself. Here I've got an x and a y in the other equation. I've got 2 equations. So it's a good candidate to use substitution. Some students get a little confused when, in our first question we had y equals 6x, and they're like, oh yeah, I can plug that whole thing in there. Here the y is just equal to a number. It does not change what you have to do. So I already have my equation where it's by itself. Actually, we're already halfway there, right? They gave us that y is -2. We just need to figure out what x is. So this is kind of easier than that first question we did. All you got to do is rewrite this second equation, 4x minus 3. But again, instead of y, we're now going to substitute in, well, y is actually -2. So instead of 3y, it's going to be 3 parentheses -2 equals 18. So now we're set up. We have an equation with only one variable. We can do this. I'm going to draw my little line over here. Before I can start moving things over, I have some multiplication to do here. -3 times -2. This is going to be 4x plus 6 equals 18. Now we can finish solving this 2 more steps away, right? -6 to both sides. 4x equals 18, take away 6 is 12. Divide that 4 out, and then we end up with x equals 3. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And so now, because they already gave us what y is, we're already done. Our final answer here is 3, -2. All right, I'm going to give one more new kind of way that you might see this, and then we're good. We've seen how to do systems of equations by substitution. So this last way, this question is not really a great candidate for substitution because a variable is not already by itself here. In our first 2 questions that we did, number 1, a variable is already by itself, y was alone here. And in this case, y was alone here as well. These are good to use substitution on because you just got to plug in and you go. This last question that we're seeing an example of, maybe once you learn elimination method or other ways to solve systems of equations, you might not use substitution, but you can always use substitution to get it done. So let's try it out. For this, my first step now is to try and get one of these variables alone. And this x has a -7 attached to it. This y has a -2 attached to it. This y has a -2 attached to it. This x is already kind of by itself. We would just have to move that 2y over. So we're going to choose this equation as my better one to get the variable alone first before we go and plug in. So we're just going to rewrite this over here. X minus 2y equals 11. And now that we've got that, I can start just getting the x by itself. Well, to do that, I can just do plus 2y to both sides. I'm allowed to do the same thing to both sides always, right? That's my properties of equality. Cancel that out, and all of a sudden, I've just created a scenario where I have a variable all by itself, just like we had in that first problem above. X equals 2y plus 11. So now what we can do here, now that we got x alone, is we can take this and plug it in to our other equation that we started with, substitute that x in for what we've got over here, and run it just like we did the questions above, right? Just like we did those questions up there. So let's do it. I'm going to start by rewriting this equation. -7, but instead of x, because we got x by itself, we can say, well, x is equal to 2y plus 11. We can just substitute that in. So in place of x, we're going to put all of this. 2y plus 11. And now we're just going to finish rewriting the rest of this. Minus 2y equals negative 13. Minus 2y equals negative 13. Now that we got a variable by itself so that we could do substitution. And now the substitution's done. Now we just got to solve for y. And we're halfway there. So start by distributing this negative 7 in. Negative 7 times 2y, negative 7 times 2y is going to be negative 14y. Negative 7 times 11 is going to be negative 77. Bring down the minus 2y, bring down the equals negative 13, and we're off to the races, right? These are my like terms here. Negative 14y is friends with this negative 2y. Those are my like terms, so I'll combine them. It'll become negative 16y. Bring down that negative 77. Bring down the negative 13 on the other side of the equal sign. And now we got to move this guy over, right? Plus 77 on both sides. Trying to get y all alone. Negative 16y equals... all right, let me grab a calculator for this one, right? No one's above needing to use a calculator sometimes, especially when it comes to some negatives. Ooh, you can't really see it on the calculator this well, but don't worry. I'll tell you what it says. Negative 13 plus 77 gets me 64. That's good. I was afraid it wasn't going to be an even number, but it is. Nice even number. Finish solving for this. Divide both sides by negative 16. Bada boom. Y is equal to 64 divided by 16. That's going to be a negative 4. And we're not done yet, right? All this work that we just did was only to find that first variable. But now we got to take this and plug it back into one of my original two to finish this entire question. So let's get to it. Y is equal to negative 4. You can choose either equation to plug it back into at this point. I'm going to plug it into the second one because there's only like an x and a negative 2y instead of all this other stuff up here. And let's write that down here. So I'm going to rewrite x minus 2. And instead of y, right, it was x minus 2y up here. I'm going to do x minus 2 parentheses negative 4. And it was equal to 11. It's not on your screen, but I can see it up there. And now we just got to solve for x, and we're done. X is, well, let's see, negative 2 times negative 4 is going to be a positive 8 equals 11. Finish solving here. Take away the 8 from both sides, minus 8, minus 8. X is going to be equal to 3. That's the second half of my answer. And so then my final answer here is 3, negative 4. And there it is. That is my solution. That was a little lesson on how to do systems of equations using substitution. Hopefully that was helpful, and enjoy.